I'm such a cheapskate because this phone can only process video for so long. But where I was going with this is that these competency and dominancy hierarchies, which are pre-established, they've become ossified to a great degree. Ossified and regimented and regulated and bureaucratized. Guess what? The alphas are not climbing the rungs by default. They're not. You know, and not all alphas are highly ambitious and driven in that direction. If you think that's the case, you're kind of missing the point. You can't relate the behavioral traits and then say, well, the alpha frickin' is the director of or a department head or somebody. No, he's not. He is not. He absolutely not. A lot of those guys are betas. In fact, I'd say most of those guys are beta. They are not alpha. Being in those positions does not make you alpha. Why? Because the criteria that gets you there is fucking different. Alpha traits, as likely as not, will keep you out of those positions. Because guess what? Alpha behavior is not strictly relegated to being disagreeable and competitive. A lot of betas who are disagreeable and competitive. Why? Because a lot of that disagreeableness and that competitiveness is actually driven by neurotic behaviors. They're so competitive because they are preoccupied with what other people see when they look at them. They are preoccupied with how other people judge them, and that acts as a driving force. It's a negative driving force. You really need to dig down and find the distinctions here, and not make the mistake of trying to define the behaviors along lines that don't really accurately define them. And one of the worst ways I think you can do it is actually through pre-existing competency and dominancy hierarchies. No, guess what? Women will screw people who are in higher positions of power, but check it out. Check it out. Which side of the hypergamy strategy are they playing out? Oh, that guy's alpha because he's got a high position, he makes a lot of money. You know, freaking he's partner. Guess what? He's probably not alpha. He might not be alpha. Because guess what? She might be seeking him for nesting purposes. Might be trying to get his resources, might be trying to lock him down, but guess what? She won't be fucking that guy because he's partner. Well, that's not accurate. She will be screwing that guy because he's partnered, because of the perks that brings, but then she's going to be stepping out and she's fucking another guy who's a lot lower on the rungs because that guy is actually exhibiting alpha traits. And that guy might very well climb to the position of partner. But you have to understand that the specific requirements of each dominance hierarchy are going to have an effect on who gets to higher paying positions in the hierarchy and who doesn't. And guess what? A lot of alphas will not conform to meet those requirements because guess what? Meeting those requirements requires an element of conformity. How do you get to be a department head? Well, guess what? You do have to bend your behavior more than a little bit. That's not alpha. Alpha is not curbing or conforming your behavior to fit into other people's accepted frames. That is not alpha. It's not, it's beta. There are a lot of betas in powerful positions. You know, freaking Rollo gives a number of examples himself of betas. Fucking, shit. There's one that's just on the tip of my tongue, but I don't want to pause the video to stop and look at it and research it because I'm kind of on a roll. But if you watch Rollo Tomasi, he'll give a number of examples of very powerful people who are actually beta. And he lays out in such a way that His argument is very convincing on that. But, there is a but. He needs to explore further why these guys are betas and go into, well, if these guys are betas, how are they getting to these high paying positions? These areas of tremendous wealth and power and influence, but they're betas. Because guess what? You can be an ambitious beta. You can. You can be a beta go-getter. The difference is, what's your motivation? What is motivating you to do that? And a beta go-getter is motivating to validate himself by standards that others are setting. That is beta behavior. He wants to prove that he's got what it takes to get a piece of the pie. So he's conforming. He's conforming by forcing himself to exhibit the behavioral traits and actions that will get him a piece of the pie. That is pure beta right there. That is textbook definition beta behavior. He's got this goal, this thing that he wants, but he has to do things that he normally wouldn't naturally want to do. Whenever you're doing something that you don't naturally want to do, you are being beta. What is beta? Beta is exhibiting provider traits. And oh God, I'm so unqualified to speak on this, but it seems tremendously obvious now. I feel like I stumbled onto something by accident. Want to know what the difference between beta and alpha is? A beta exhibits provider traits and alpha exhibits sexual traits. And alpha does what he wants, when he wants, does not care about how other people perceive him, and does not compromise his behavior to fit other people's expectations. A beta does compromise their behavior. The beta will do what they don't want to do. And a lot of times that is goal driven. They will do what they don't want to do to achieve the goal. The betas are the long range thinkers. The alphas are the short range thinkers. The alphas don't think long range usually. Or they don't let that change their behavior. They don't do things they don't want to do for the sake of achieving a goal. Not really. Freaking. Now, this is not to say that they will not endure hardship. They will not push themselves. It's just that they won't do something that they don't have some kind of investment in. Like if they're going to be competitive, it's because they love what they do. If they're going to go through suffering or put themselves under performance demands, it's because they love doing it. They don't do it because they don't want to. That is the difference between an alpha and a beta. The alpha is not a good provider. Why? Because he doesn't want to provide. He doesn't want to do that. You have to want to do that if you're an alpha. That's why it's so hard for a woman to find an alpha who will stick around. Most alphas do not have the qualities that will make them want to do that because that isn't one of their goals. They have no desire to do that. It can be kind of mind-boggling, but you don't want to overcomplicate it more than you have to. If things do not make sense, and these are actually the words of another very wonderful individual who's incredibly intelligent and tells it like it is and has done a lot of good work for men, for our gender, our side of the race. Donovan Sharp. Men like Donovan Sharp, Rollo Tomasi, Coach Greg Adams, I just want to say that I have the highest amount of admiration for these guys for not only setting wonderful examples for what men can and should aspire to be, but also by going out of their way to help the rest of us, showing us that it can happen, showing us what we're getting into when it comes to entering into any kind of interaction with a woman. What's the lay of the land? These guys are our battle strategists. These guys are our battle commanders. They're showing us how to go about navigating this battlefield of a very gynocentric, feminist, a very hostile environment for men. It is dangerous out there for us. It can be difficult to see at times, but then it tends to crop up in certain interactions like it's invisible until you hit a mine. And the minefields are all over the place. But you don't see how dangerous this landscape is for men until you bump into one of those mines. So most men are completely wholly aware of it. And I've put forth some effort to trying to spread this knowledge. I don't like to use the term red pill, manosphere, that kind of stuff, because I feel that putting a brand on it makes it very easy to attack it and try to associate with an ideology. So I don't like to throw around red pill or stuff like that, because the way I see it, no, this is not red pill. This is the way it is, and everything else is bullshit. Red pill, blue pill, no. There is this way of understanding it. When you put the work in to see how men and women actually operate, and how our society operates, and how the world works in terms of male and female relations. There is the attempt to understand that world the way it is, and then there's the attempt to make up shit. To make up shit and create false narratives to try and get people to believe that it works a different way. There is the honest, analytical, scientific method which makes the observation king. The observation and the objective observation of what's going on in the world king, and the standard by which you have to judge things. And then there's the method of using false narratives, which are agenda driven, where you have a goal to get something or achieve something, basically get your way, rather than just finding out and plainly stating the truth. So I don't like to use the word red pill. I think it's a bad idea. Yeah, and also because people will hear that name, they'll hear red pill, and then if they got a poor explanation of it, or God forbid, frickin' they heard what red pill is from a fucking feminist, they're going to hear the word red pill and they're already going to be concluded that it's a bad thing based on a misunderstanding of the term. So I suggest any man out there, if you're trying to spread red pill truth, the last thing you want to do is mention red pill. What you need to do, explain the concepts in a neutral way. Avoid any of the buzzwords. Do not mention the buzzwords. Some of the buzzwords include red pill, blue pill, manosphere, freaking try to not touch on these things. Why? You don't know what the other person might have heard. And you need them. You're not trying to convince anyone of anything. What you're trying to get them to do is to be willing to take enough time and effort to do their own research and come to their own conclusion. Intelligent, rational, objective people who are capable of reassessing how they view different topics depending on what new information comes in. These people will come to a correct conclusion on your own. You don't need to convince them. All you need to do is introduce them. Introduce them to it. Tell them it's something interesting. They might want to look into it. That you thought it was a real eye-opener and that you thought they might like it. And then stop. Do not be a used car salesman. Do not make the mistake of trying to sell them the car, especially below Blue Book. No, no. Point at the car, tell them, make your own decision on it. You're more likely to get people to have the willingness to take an interest and basically become informed enough about the red pill truth. Bring my hand out. The red pill truth. Blah 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 blah. You're gonna convince people. Well, not even convince. See, I'm using bad words right now. I want to stay away from these words. These words are not what we're trying to achieve. We're not trying to convince people. I'm not trying to convince people, or I shouldn't be. I'm trying to introduce ideas that I examined and have come to hold as correct to other people so they can examine them and decide whether or not they believe they're correct. And they're perfectly free to not like it. They're perfectly free to come to the conclusion that it's incorrect. I haven't. I've come to the conclusion that the red pill truth, as it were, is very much the defining objective truth of how men and women operate in our societies and how they've always operated. And that's because I put the work in and I sought it out. No red pill Jehovah's Witness knocked on my door with a copy of the Rational Mail and said, have you got hypergamy in your life? It's like, no, that didn't happen. I sought it out. Like, I stumbled across it, but I sought it out. I stumbled across it and I got a taste of it. I'm like, this is interesting. I started thinking, there is something to this. There is something to what these people are saying. There's something to the framework that they're introducing to me. It has, for me, I'm very preoccupied with understanding the truth of things. More Coke Zero in the bottle. Delicious. I'm very preoccupied with the truth, and for me, my beliefs and conclusions, especially the ones that have deeper held meanings, I by necessity, I need them to have accuracy and I need them to be true, which means they have to stand up to scrutiny. I don't believe things that cannot hold up to scrutiny. I don't want to believe a falsehood. Like I have an existential fear of believing in falsehoods and investing in them, and God forbid identifying with them and then finding those falsehoods are not true. And there's the rub, because you'll find the vast majority of people, men included, like, they have beliefs that aren't their own. Most people, their beliefs are not their own. They're not their own beliefs. They're someone else's beliefs, and those beliefs were basically forced upon them. When you're 5 years old and you get raised to go to church every day, and believe in God and Jesus Christ and all that good shit, yeah, that belief is being forced on you. You're not given a choice in that. Now, granted, you're really too young to be able to make a well-informed decision on that, but still, it's being forced. You're being indoctrinated forcefully. Now, you can debate till the end of time whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. And I think some level of indoctrination is necessary and good when it comes to children. Like, it's kind of necessary. For one thing, you have to indoctrinate good social traits into children at a very young age. Like freaking by 4, you have to have your youngin toilet trained enough to where he is he is able to get along with other children, and other children will want to be around him and want to play him. And I'm unabashedly pairing Jordan Peterson. I'm flagrantly taking his statement from that because it's very accurate. It states that unequivocally in the most basic sense, the most basic terms that I couldn't find better words. I know the lighting's horrible. I'm a lazy asshole. Like I'm not lighting this up for you. Freaking seeing me is not really important. You've seen me in my one other YouTube video, so seeing how I look is not important at all. And God, I'm digressing again. I'll get better, promise. I'll try. Just I'm an amateur. Give me a fucking break. I see all these guys with their freaking studio setups and fucking $1,000 fucking cameras and shit like that. Oh, I spent fucking $5,000 on this freaking MacBook Pro, and like, guys, I got the training wheels on here. you know, Give me a break. And freaking the quality of the equipment and your studio setup should not determine the validity of your content. Only thing important right now is what I'm saying. And that is only important based on my belief that the accuracy of the content is valid. If it wasn't, nothing I say would be worth anything. So, yeah, indoctrination at a young age is actually very important and is actually necessary. And when I say indoctrination, it's more accurate to say socialization. You're indoctrinating the ability for your kid to be social with other kids and adults at a young age so they get along and people will want to be around them. So that's very important and necessary. The unfortunate consequence, though, is that along with socializing your children at a young age, what ends up happening is that a lot of times a belief system will creep in there too. It'll get indoctrinated right along that. So now you've got kids who are socialized well enough to get along, but they also operate through an inaccurate and invalid framework that they're unwilling to detach themselves from. Like their entire identity is defined by that framework. And I have firsthand witnessed what happens to people when they perceive that framework is being challenged in any way. Like it gets fucking ugly. Those people damn near get violent. In some cases, they will get violent. They will treat you like you are trying to kill them. And in a sense, you are. When a person identifies so wholly with a particular system of beliefs, it becomes a part of their identity. And when you try to question the validity of that, you end up attacking their ego or their sense of identity, how they define themselves as they understand it as a person. And that very much equates with death. Ego death is a traumatic experience for someone to go through. Like there's a lot of very, very bad things that will go on in the head of a person who experiences an ego death before they recover. And when they do recover, they usually end up being a better person. They end up growing from the experience. It's like the rise of the phoenix. You have to kill the old you off so the new you, who is better in most ways, if not every way, can become born. I believe I have experienced an ego death. I've gone through some pretty heavy trauma that really fundamentally forced me to completely reassess everything about myself and my life. And that was very painful. And that's why I'm not very attached to beliefs. You know, that's like being attached to fiction. What if something about your belief turns out to not be wholly accurate? Because if your beliefs are based on anything even approaching the truth is not necessarily static. Or rather, one's understanding of the truth is not static. Why? Because the whole truth of things is not revealed at the start. You know, scientific truth is not revealed at the start. You know, it took centuries, freaking a very long time, even before, well, even after the scientific method was established. It takes a long time to learn things about how your world works, how you work, what things are like, and why they're like that. You know, that takes a tremendous amount of time. So the truth is not completely uncovered at the start, but I believe it's there. I believe it takes a great deal of courage to face it. And the truth, and how it pertains to, say, intersexual dynamics between men and women, and in context of the information that men like Rollo Tomasi have expounded upon and explained in detail. That truth is absolutely ugly. I mean, it's frightening. It's horrifying. There is, but here's the thing. It is all of those things. It is not fucking pleasant to look at all. Like staring that in the face, that's a hard thing to do. You don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't like looking that fucking truth in the face. It's unpleasant. But the thing about it is that things that are true tend to have this horrific, unholy, dare I say it, ungodly elegance to them. They are not nice, but there's like a perfection in it. It's like the ugliest form of beauty you can freaking imagine. And there's a bit of, it's a case of where the accuracy of the truth results in there being no dichotomy whatsoever between how you observe things to be and how the way things work is explained. The truth is when there is zero dichotomy between the explanation of why things work the way they do and what you observe. That is the truth, and there is an elegance in that. Why? Guess what? It doesn't take that much work to understand it and to grasp it, really. You buy into a bunch of leftist fucking feminist bullshit, and then you freaking go and try to apply that in the real world, and you find out it doesn't line up at all with what you're experiencing in reality. It's like, well, that can't be the truth. Why? Because I take your explanation for how things work and how I'm supposed to apply that. I go out there and my experience vastly differs from the one you claim I should be having. When that happens, that is not the truth. The truth is when someone gives you a working explanation of something and a method to apply it, you go out there and you can see the results manifest. That's the truth. Anyone who disagrees, in my opinion, because you know what? You don't even get that. You don't get an in my opinion. You get a this is the way it is. Anyone who disagrees is attached to a framework based on a false narrative that stems from their indoctrination in an untrue belief that they identify with so closely that they are utterly terrified to detach from it. because they're unwilling to go through the trauma of that. And they're unwilling to put the work in. They don't have the balls to take the risk of becoming lost. They don't want to chance the nihilism it can bring up. Because believe me, you will feel nihilistic for a good long minute. You know, you have to go through the grieving stages. Like the 5 states of grief. You will have to go through that. You know, you are going to inflict a trauma on your psyche when you choose to embrace truths that have been hidden from you and purposefully distorted to fit agendas. And it will be traumatic when you uncover them. And suddenly you have to change what you believe because it's not the truth. And again, I'm going on a big fucking existential, philosophical fucking rant that is kind of leaving the point. But what I'm getting at is that I had an experience that seemed to give me a good working definition of what alpha versus beta behavior is in a way that I think can apply to pretty much anybody in any scenario. I really do think there's something to this, and I've got to put more work in, you know, both to verify it, you know, like things like this being so connected to psychological states. It's very difficult to like force this. Like, oh, I'm gonna have this freaking psychological experiment where I try to see how I can compel an alpha mentality in myself. It's like, well, fuck, good luck with that. We don't have very much control over our minds. You know, we have pretty much no control over our unconscious. You know, it's hard enough just forcing those compulsions into awareness so you like even know it's happening. That is hard enough. So trying to impose some kind of will on it, good luck, but I'm going to try. Now, I've got an obligation to myself to have a better understanding of this. And dare I say, I have an obligation to try to share it in a way that's useful to people in some way. And I hope this video is. But, so to sum it up, alpha behavior, as I understand it, applying to as many people as possible and applying across as many different scenarios and contexts as it can, is simply conducting yourself in a manner to where you do not care how you are perceived by other people. It's not forcing your behavior to conform to what other people accept. It is doing what you want to do and utterly disregarding how other people observe it. And going farther than that, how they would judge it. That is alpha. That is quintessential alpha. Beta is when you conform your behavior to fit other people's expectations. You conform your behavior so that it matches what you think other people would find acceptable, and you do this to avoid a bad outcome. That's the entire driving force behind a beta mentality. I'm trying to avoid a bad outcome because I think doing what I want to do in the moment is going to result in something bad happening if someone catches me doing it. Because guess what? A lot of beta people who are very beta in public, when they're in private, are different people. When they're in private and they're convinced that no one knows what they're doing, they're different people. I think that's an important thing to touch on, an important thing to keep in mind. A lot of people who are beta in public, they're different in private. Freaking, I think a beta, when he is freed from the burden of knowing that he's being observed, is actually alpha. A beta by himself is alpha by himself. Now, whether or not he's happy, that's a whole other thing, freaking. But freaking, I think a beta will exhibit alpha traits and conduct himself in large part as an alpha would if there wasn't anyone else around. He'd do what he wanted in the moment without even thinking about what other people are making of what he's doing. So yeah, that's all I got. The video, 36 minutes. That's not bad. If I can keep a video to around half an hour to get something across. Actually, this is, I think, on the longer side because I had split it into two parts. And I didn't do a very good job because I'm an amateur. But yeah, this, I guess you could call part two of a two-part video. And God, I've got to learn how to get my presentation a lot better. Starting the video isn't that big a problem, but like finding a stopping point and wrapping it up, that's fucking, I got to work on that. Anyways, that's all I got. And yeah, bye.